Welcome, my name is Fabian Westerheide. I'm an entrepreneur and investor with a passion for artificial intelligence, and this is the next episode of our Rise of AI virtual chat. My guest today is Chris Bose, CEO and founder of the company Arago, an AI company around in Germany for a while. But also Chris is a super interesting personality you should meet and get to know. He's advisor to our government, he is a multiplicator, he's a forward thinker, but he's also a very technical guy. So I'm having a very interesting conversation today about future optimism and how artificial intelligence and technology can help us to overcome the big challenges. So stay online, watch it for another hour, and enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Rise of AI virtual chat. My name is Fabian Westerheide. I'm your host for today. Our honorary guest, Chris Bose, is already in the green room. You have to check out his t-shirt later and compare to this one because we spoke about this before. Let me share a second for you the slides for today. So we speak about future optimism. And that's a very difficult term, and I don't honestly know how to describe it best. I have a lot of questions here, but the answer of the thesis of Chris is we will have a new system. Technology will change a lot about the way we communicate, about society, and we can use it for good. We can use it to solve a lot of problems, from climate to refugee crisis to hunger, free education, etc. So we will go into where's the problems today? How can we solve them without changing the whole system? And what would be a new possible system for us? Please, in the chat, everyone out there, introduce yourself, share your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter profile. In the same message, you can say what you do, what you look for, what's your interest. So you get to know everyone out there, they get to know you. And let me start for a second. Like this, write whatever you want to. Don't write 5 or 6 times, just write it once. A lot of people watch this replay and then they go through the LinkedIn list too and contact you. And that's how we build a small community of people who were here live together or joined in later. And now to Chris. So Chris Bose is, and I picked this slide because he loves to wear t-shirts with meaning. And, it's not a plain shirt, it's a shirt with meaning. And that was an inspiration for me. And since I do the virtual chats, every episode I had a different t-shirt with hopefully a meaning to, always fitting to the topic of today. And he was my inspiration to do this one day too. I think it's pretty cool. So he has he has amazing many t-shirts, and all of them let you think. Else, Chris, he is a smart guy. He's a technical guy, so he can code, which is important in our times, but he's how do you say, easy to talk to. My wife, Veronica, likes to say he speaks in Twitter sentences, so you can quote him. He's able to make complex situations so easy explained that you can quote him easy and everyone gets it. That's why he's, next to being an entrepreneur and maybe a business angel, also asked by many political institutions to help them, because he has knowledge and he can explain them in non-technical terms what this situation is, how easy this is, and how successful he is with this. He will tell us in a couple of minutes. So he's member of a Digitalrat to Kanzlerin Merkel. He was involved in starting a decentralized Corona tracking app. He's the founder and former CEO of Arago, an AI company over in the Frankfurt-Main region, and he is a Rise of AI speaker. In the past, he would have been on our stage this year. Didn't happen. That's why he's live with us now today. And let me bring him online. Hey, Chris.
Hello. And, by the way, let me get up on this, right? Life, the universe, and everything. That is for sure.
Wonderful. I'd like to ask Chris, did anything change in your lifestyle when Corona came?
I should probably say no, right? Because I'm this IT person who loves to live in his basement, in the cave, or anything like this. But a lot of things have changed, actually, right? So I also like horse riding and being outside, and I'm as you can see, I like going out and having fun in the beer garden. That all is not happening, and I think people are social animals, and I think what is happening to society is very dangerous. And now we have two dangers, right? We have the danger of infecting ourselves, and we have the danger of becoming antisocial, and that is horrible. And as much as I love digital technology, it can't replace human touch, right? It just can't. And this is why it is really important that we talk about these things and we overcome them, because right now that is simply not possible. A lot of things will not be possible for quite a while. But if you never talk, you just distance further and further and further, and I think that's a huge problem.
So I had the feeling before Corona came, we were in this AI movement. The government discussed AI. European Union was doing the white paper in AI. I had a lot of one-to-one meetings, so it was a relevant agenda topic. Then Corona came and overrode everything. Still, digitalization is needed. So how do you see it from your view? Is AI now pushed from the attention to something like colder period, or is it hitting us even harder what the relevance is?
So to me, AI is still at the core of things, and Corona is actually accelerating this a great deal. And what has happened is that we stopped talking about AI as in technology, right? And I'm saying this as someone who's advocating more generalized AI or horizontal AI that can be applied in many fields instead of being very, very specialized in one use case. The point that we have now is we stopped talking about AI as a specific tech. Mm-hmm. Now we're all of a sudden talking about the results of AI in terms of automation. Like, how can we automate vaccine research? How can we automate food growth? How can we automate this, that, and the other? And I think this whole question of having machines do more things that humans used to do makes a lot of sense, and is totally accelerated. Now we humans have the responsibility to make use of that opportunity, right? Because it's an opportunity. We are de facto digitizing now at lightning speed, and we've got the question like, where is, as people, as human beings, where do we want to go next? But has Corona taken AI off the charts? Not at all. We finally stopped talking about artificial intelligence. We finally started to talk about the impact and the result of artificial intelligence. You know, AI is a topic for nerds, right? So we want to talk about algorithms and the math behind it and geometry mapping and whatever. But to someone normal, the question is, what does AI do, right? And what it does is it multiplies the experience that you already have.
Yes.
And then automates it.
I would like to see myself as an AI philosopher. I would love to discuss like ethical issues about AI, what rights do they get, to how to control, how to regulate. I think these are the problems who are currently not solved and we need to solve. So you proposed this topic of future optimism as a keynote for the Rise of AI conference. And you say we have to transform Europe's industry into a platform economy. Because, you know, GAFA is doing it really pretty well. They have high margins, they have more purchasing power, everything. And we have a very old industry with very little margins, which is not digitized. And Corona shows us you couldn't go to court, you couldn't go to administration. A lot of services, which could be virtual, were not virtual there. So we need AI, we need machine learning, we need virtual tools. Before we dig in, I see the one option. The system we have stays, or the system changes, and either it changes radical or soft. If you speak about a new system, do you speak about revolution or evolution?
Well, that is really the question here, right? Because a revolution normally is something violent and disruptive. And basically, if you look at systematic changes in history, most of those were not very pleasant for everyone involved. And evolution is something that comes gradually. It can come very fast, right? But it is something that happens more softly. And if you have conscious beings like humans, then you can even design your path, meaning that you can understand where you're going and why. So I would prefer to speak about evolution because it is what we're doing, right? So I think this whole idea industry is bad and platform is good or the other way around, right? That's not right. The real question is how to combine it. And I don't think that we need to transform Europe into a platform economy at all. I believe that the age of industrialization, that is just coming to an end, right? The part where we have really gotten good at using economies of scales, being the best ones in creating the best processes, using the most efficiency and so on, that is coming to an end, simply because if you have a machine do those things, it doesn't really matter how efficient you've done them because the machine is doing them cheaply anyway. So we're getting more to a knowledge economy. And there's been so much written about this over the past, 20, 30 years, or an experience economy, right? And then we define the space for humans afresh. And this is also why I think it's optimistic, right? Is what do we do as people? I mean, we're not, generally, does industrialization make people happy? Going to the office,
the work not.
I have there's statistics, right, showing that there's more depression in highly industrialized countries than in countries that have civil war. Or I always make this joke: if you go to any S-Bahn station in the morning, right, any subway station, and you look at the people going, and then they go into their office, right? We need the jobs. But how much of those jobs do make us really happy? Like I have a job that I love to do, right? Because I love dealing with AI.
It even starts with the term job. I don't like the term job. In German, we say Berufung.
Yeah, we should. That's more passion, right? But the point is that even if you have a job you love, there are probably half of what you do you tolerate, so you can do the other half. Because it just needs doing. And I think that we are at a point now where we can overcome the limitations that economies of scale put on us, meaning standardization, basically, and consolidation. By having machines, we can multiply the experience and the knowledge that every single human has. And I think that is wonderful. Because it means that people can focus on what people are made for, evolutionary, meaning dealing with other people. Now that's interesting, right? Because we're in a time where we're not supposed to deal with other people, but that makes it more important to deal with other people. And I don't mean going out to weird protests. I mean, talk to people much more, right? Catching human closeness cannot be replaced by intellectual closeness. So if you want to replicate a hug, you probably have to talk to someone very closely for an hour, right? So that is being close and enjoying being close and drawing strength from that. That is very human and it makes us happy. And the second one is making new experiences, right? If machines can execute our experience and multiply us, it means that our job is to make new experiences. And so, every child, right? This is what every child does. Every child is born and then makes new experiences. At some point, we seem to stop, even though most people love making new experiences. And then they have hobbies and they make new experiences by playing the guitar or the synthesizer or something, right? So it's amazing.
Let me jump in because you say so many interesting, smart things, and I need to squeeze some questions in to go deeper. First, during the industrialization, the families were ripped apart. I mean, that's a trend. Families used to live together, very social in small communities, and now some moved in the city. Today, we have so many single households more than ever. So social distance is by culture, it started to happen. Now, Corona makes this even worse. Bad voices out there say this is purpose. This is like a strategic master plan to drive society apart, to make them dependent on government and state as the only religious belief to live for. Do you think there's something like Corona is, I mean, it's accelerating this. It's keeping us even more apart by law.
I totally disagree. I very strongly disagree with this, right? Because in the end, look, our entire world is based on trust. A family is based on trust. If you can't trust your family, and this is why things where your trust is defeated because you wrongly trusted someone. Why this hurts so much, right? It could be a loved one leaving you, or it could be someone talking badly about you, all these things, or right. This is when trust is betrayed. But everything is built on trust. So are our democratic states, right? They're not built on fear. Like a democracy is not built on fear. It cannot be built on fear. It's built on trust. And this is why the whole idea of a government wants people who don't trust or wants to sow distrust and so on is simply, in a democracy, a stupid idea. You need this for a totalitarian regime, but a totalitarian regime works very differently. It only works fear-based. And that has nothing to do with Corona, right? Because in Corona, the fear is something natural. You see people die and so on and so forth. And the question is, how does government use it? And I'm not afraid of any of this. I mean, we have a parliament, right? Parliament controls government. We have an independent justice system. Parliament makes laws that is then executed by government and controlled by the justice system. This democracy might not be very reactive and fast and all the things that we seem to criticize, but it is a system that keeps a balance and keeps control. It does simply not work in a fear-driven environment. And this is always why I say the question of just jumping after your emotions and fear is a very, very strong emotion. That is weird. I don't believe in the conspiracy that Corona is put there to make us more compliant.
Okay, I agree for you for many countries. I'm sure some countries will use this as a reason, like 9/11, to push some legislation which is not benefiting human rights and civil rights. Since you're so close to government, I can say this, it's public news, you're close to government. I mean, they ask you for advice. Do they listen?
Yes. I mean, the interesting part, I admire, the more I have to do with public life, the more I admire the people who choose this as a career. Mm-hmm. I think that we as normal people often see politicians as power hungry or whatever. If you have some experience being in the limelight and people can talk about you whatever they like, and you try to do the right thing, and of course, wisdom of hindsight, afterwards you know everything better, right? And politicians choose to do this for a living every day. You have to admire them. And I can tell you that my personal original thought going into the Digital Council was, okay, if you're asked by the Chancellor, you can't say no, right? But then is it worth the time, right? Because time is the only thing that is really limited to a person. Is it worth the time? And I think I had this question of, okay, how can we out of this very, very quickly? And then I met these people and they're genuinely interested, and they actually have at their core the interest to do the right thing for us as a society. Mm-hmm. They might not always be right, but come on. And some things that people do fail. But then in the startup world, we're always talking about the failure culture. But whenever you fail on something, right, you are bashed in politics, but also in projects, right? You have a digitization project that fails. Well, because for 100 years companies have been doing something different. The technology is there, but how do you move there? Failure is natural. It needs to happen. It's part of evolution, right? So I think, they do listen, and they have at the core, the question is, what can we do for us as a society? Because I don't just, at the beginning of this, I just had contacts right to elected officials, mm-hmm. Which I think people who are going through a very, very tough process and public limelight. During the Corona crisis, I now had connection to a lot of people in the administration, mm-hmm. right? So the old-fashioned German civil servants. Mm-hmm. And we always make fun of these people. Like, we think they're just polishing their trees all day in the office. And that is so not true.
No, I mean, they have way much to do. They have too much to do.
Actually do things. We don't see them, but if they would just stick with the rules and have nothing would move. Nothing would have moved in this crisis because everything changed. And we can say, yeah, it's really bad that we couldn't go to court and blah. But imagine how fast that changed, right? That rate of change was not thought possible even half a year ago. And it's not done by magic. It's done by people who go above and beyond. And I think we never recognize the Beamten who do all these things.
My huge compliments.
We should. They are
these
guys are frontline workers, just like nurses.
My compliments to everyone out there working in public administration or in healthcare during Corona. They kept this world going, and I was positively surprised how quick they were able to make legislation, laws, and concrete things like how to treat restaurants, events, etc. Sure, they were not perfect, they did some mistakes, but nevertheless, it was quick, and they avoided that it's getting extreme.
A lot of shit is happening, and a lot of the stuff doesn't work. But that's okay, right? If no one was doing anything, and I can tell you personally, being put on the spot and being dissed on Twitter and having nasty articles written about you, you've got to ask yourself, like, look, making nasty profit from a crisis, that seems to be okay. Selling a mask that used to be 20 cents for now $20, right? Right? That is worth like this much news. Picking apart people who try to do something good by building something on digital or putting something out there as a project that didn't work and so on, there you get slapped all over the place. And you've got to ask yourself, like, why should I do this? And you've got to imagine on the public sector side, people choose to do that because they believe in it. And we need to have some respect for this. Even if a lot of stuff fails, we need to have a much better failure culture. In Germany, there used to be the saying, like, whoever creates a mess needs to clean up the mess, right? Jemand, der die Suppe hat, muss die Suppe auslöffeln. Suppe einholen. This is gone, right? As soon as someone creates a mess or something goes wrong, we turn publicly, because with the wisdom of hindsight, we know everything better. And that doesn't make sense. Like, we need to move forward. We need to say, like, okay, they tried, let's learn from it, let's try again.
So we need a failure culture for administration and for policymakers. I agree. Just for everyone out there who did not follow the news, and I try to avoid them too, Chris had the altruistic push to help with Corona and develop in a large consortium up to 150 people or tracking app. And he got public, I would say, shit. Yes, just some shit hit his fan because some people dissed him and wrote negative articles and then combined stuff about his companies and so forth. And I agree, no one wants to read his face and negative headlines on the newspapers if you have good intentions, to help society.
Well, look, I mean, the whole question. So we never built a Corona app, right? What we try to do is put the backend behind it so stuff gets interoperable and is privacy preserving. And even though it hurt a lot reading this stuff on Twitter and in the press about yourself, I asked myself, would you do that again? And I'd say yes, because it's important to have put that on the map. And also the whole discussion in the end turns out that we go from discussing algorithmic privacy to what does privacy actually mean? Like, if I don't know if I'm infected, can I go out into public and potentially willfully harm other people? So these are the discussions that are being had now. And I think this is really important. So sometimes maybe you just have to take the pain, right? And then there are lots of companies out there that are doing altruistic things, and then they're getting bashed because in the end they're trying to make money. Sure, this is why companies exist, right? Companies then pay employees and so on. But there has been so much pro bono activity out there, which is totally amazing. So I think that economy, for the most part, is totally stepping up and doing their part.
So let's come back to AI in these terms.
Yes.
You said our industry has to switch from industry and services to knowledge society or knowledge workers. We both are, I would say, mainly knowledge workers already because we don't work with our hands and something in between. I see two ways. One is startups emerge, new business, and the existing industry adapts. Now they don't do this really well from my view. And both is mediocre if I compare it to United States and China. But what is your view on this?
I think that we cannot underestimate the question of converting old industry. And I know, like, if you look at Clay Christensen and the innovator's dilemma and so on, this is hard, but we still have to try. If you look at what industrialization did for us, it brought a good life to a lot of people and much longer life to a lot of people. And it would be totally wrong. And I know that some of us in the digital society basically do this and say like, oh no, all this industry stuff is bad and it's bullshit, and reinvent everything. And this is like the typical old guy, young guy thing, right? So I think the point is that, especially with AI, and this is why I think AI is such a key technology, AI is there to replicate experiences already made. Mm-hmm. And we are so successful as a country, as a society, as companies, because there is a lot of experience, and we have been very good in applying this experience in an industrial way. Now, the thing that we need is not just new companies that pop up and have really new disruptive models. We also need the companies and people that already have experience to use this experience in a new way. And this is hard, right? Because you have to maybe change your business model. And I experience this quite often. Like, we do crazy stuff with AI, mm-hmm. Like multiplying the productivity of an industry. And then the industry can't implement it because it's so hard to change the business model. And to me, it makes me very sad if we then have to sell that stuff off to other countries or other companies instead of having it done in Europe.
You said it's hard. Where is, like, what are the problems companies face? I mean, intellectual, they know we have to do it, and then it doesn't happen. Where does it like stop saying what are the walls here down?
If you look at digitization, right? Digitization is happening from a consumer basis, right? All the services that we have are consumer-based services. And why is that? Because in a consumer, you have to convince one person that it's beneficial for them. And then if you're lucky, that person even go tell his friends. And this is how you can build competition for established value chain or established chains of production and so on. But if you look in a company, you have not just to convince one person, right? There's always a company, per definition, is an organization, is an organism where many components work together. So if you really want to change something, you have to, instead of pulling against each other and creating an equilibrium that works really well, you have to make them all pull in the same direction. And this is why a lot of things that are technically possible and that you could do don't get done, because it is so hard to make companies move. This is, I guess, what we call change management. And this is where Corona actually helped a lot, right? A lot of the questions of change management and where can we pick people up and so on, this pandemic has solved for us in a way, because people now have an interest of digitizing.
They're sitting at home, they need decentralized things, they need to work remote. That's a huge boost for digitalization because you don't have the physical face-to-face anymore.
But if you look at the development in Germany, right, it looks like we were sitting in the deck chair for a long time and saying, yeah, digitalization is important, but can I have my beer first? Now, Corona feels like we've all gotten up and said, like, okay, let's get shit done. And people are going out there and trying, and sometimes they're slow, and sometimes they're failing, and sometimes they can't do it at all. But for most of the time, if someone does not try, it will never happen, right? And even if the first try does not live up to the potential, it's bad, right? So I've had this question of, for example, animal feeding, right? Can we have animals that by feeding them automatically, A, treat them better, and B, have more efficiency in that, get better results? And yeah, all the results you can achieve technically sound too good to be true, like multiply productivity by 3, but then how to implement this? And this is very difficult. And then the whole thing gets declared as a failure just because you were not able to implement at a large scale what is possible technically, but that's because there is inertia. And I think the current crisis helps us overcome inertia. If we now, the question is, do we do this in an egotistical way, or do we do this in a solidaric way? And if we can do it with solidarity, I think that we can even profit as human beings from it.
So I try each time. It's difficult to speak about optimism. You say there will be a new system, even if you say it will be more evolution and not revolution. Describe us your vision of a new system, like how to imagine then life and industry in 20, 30 years. Because this takes time.
First push, our current system is built around industrialization, right? And we've set it up.
You speak about the German system or the European one?
Well, generally the global system.
The global system, okay.
Very great example, right? So we can stick with Germany and Europe because we are highly industrialized and we're good at it as a country, as a society. And we have these three components that make sure that our industrialization system works very well, right? We have politics, we have economy, and we have society. And if you look at one of those players, they each hate the other ones, right? So in politics, say like, society is not moving and economy is not moving. The people say the companies are just taking, the companies are behaving badly and politics is not doing anything. And companies says like politics isn't doing anything and the people are all lazy, right? Basically, what we do is three people pull at each other, and this creates a very stable thing in the middle, which is the equilibrium that we've been living in, right? This is what makes our system very stable. Sometimes crappy, but very stable. Right? Exactly, 42. The problem is that this industrialized system is coming to it's like a pyramid, right? We have an equilibrium in the middle of this, but we're moving on, and we don't need those industrial principles anymore the more AI comes. And so now we
think about education, about mobility, about how factories line up, how society is working, payments, taxes. I mean, if I take out industrialization, so much stuff could change.
Yes, all the industries could change. So now, where industrialization was our current system, I think that the new system is digital technology. And AI at its core, because it means that humans can focus more on human things, and we'll get to that. I hope we'll still have time for it. Humans can do human things, and we can do things that are much more focused towards happiness, and we can still be economically extremely successful. But the change that we must overcome is that all of a sudden, these three components that we have to create this equilibrium, the safe zone for us where we have a good system, these three components, instead of pulling at each other to create a stable system, all of a sudden have to pull in the same direction to move us to the digital technology system.
But and this, I only have seen last time, for example, in France, kind of under Macron, he was able to at least move a little bit of this direction, but has forces pulling back. I have not seen this anywhere close, except of maybe China in the last 30 years, able to move a whole system.
Well, I think that we can do it. I believe as an entrepreneur, I've been in the economy. As someone who's going out there a lot and talking to people, I think I have a good ear on society. And I am the first one to also be talking to trade unions and so on who represent us as people. And now having learned a lot about how countries are run, I think there is the total ability so that we can pull together in the same direction. We have relapses, right? If you look at the media coverage in the beginning of Corona, everybody was completely sensible, right? Everybody tried to do the right thing and so on. Now we feel like safe, and we're going back to old behavior patterns. We're taking the club and we're bashing each other. I mean, look at what happened to Mr. Drosten, like one of the like, key speakers, a renowned scientist, a person who's always kept their calm and so on. Now, bam, bam, what the fuck, right? We're going back to these old behavior patterns, but there are lots of people who are calling this out. So I believe that we can overcome this. Of course, when in times of distress, and the lockdown is distressing us, there is economic doom coming, and we want to go out, and we're unhappy that we maybe can't go on holidays that much and so on, right? So there is distress. And the natural reaction is fall into old behavior patterns. But there are so many people who say like, no, don't do this again. It was so much better when we all pulled into the same direction. There is hope. We can do it. We can pull into the same direction.
It was the three elements, let's say society, politics, industry. If I look in the United States, it was mainly driven by industry. Even society policy injected a lot of incentives into Silicon Valley to emerge. At the end, Silicon Valley emerged and pulls a lot of these trends up there. In China, you have very strong government there. Germany never had a revolution, never. Everything we ever had, every system change came from up on top. So where will we gather this energy to start moving? Where will it come from? From the industry, which is almost like 120 years old, from politicians which are overworked and overwhelmed, or from a society which is sitting at their home office and is chilling because they have a good life?
No, I think you're too negative on this, right? I mean, you can make this example, and there are always bad examples, and there are always things that fail, but there's also a lot of good examples, right? If you look at, for example, like an icon is the train service in Germany, Deutsche Bahn, right? Mm-hmm. These guys have been there throughout the Corona crisis. They have been there. I've been traveling on completely empty trains. They've been there. It's a symbol of hope, right? And they did it at great financial cost, right? And now as a society, we have to pick it up. But that's a symbol. And you have these symbols all over the places. And I could make many more examples and much more technical examples. You have people that right now try to reinvent their companies. You have people trying to... So the only thing that can endanger this development is us going into circles of a blame game. Like, whose fault is it? You can't trust the other guy. They're all corrupt, and so on, blah, blah, right? This whole game, and I am very scared of these demonstrations that I see out there, right? Where with the conspiracy theories and the blame game that is happening now, also starting in politics again, right? There's a blame game. There used to be great unity, and people pulled in the same direction. I wonder, was this exhilarating to see how much could get done across federal and state government in Germany when they pulled into the same direction?
Oh yes.
Like if we look at now going back to fighting about everything, I hope that people remember how exhilarating it was to actually getting shit done quickly.
Because we're the common
companies, right? Getting shit done. He said, like, last week this worked. Why can't we do it? And I hope, I haven't seen this yet, but I hope we get the same feeling across the board in society. Because remembering how cool it is to actually get shit done, failing, getting back up, trying it again, then we can really move forward. And we don't need a revolution for that, right? We don't need the guillotine. We need to move forward.
I agree with you with the optimistic view on it, and I wish to gather this positive energy too and to use it more. My learning from history is that you only can achieve this with force, or by a war. You have a common enemy and you fight against this like a virus which is uniting. You need a purpose to unite. And I think just AI is not a positive thing enough in society to bring out these positive forces. So where do you see a positive story for people to say, oh, that's the reason why I work the extra mile, why I pivot my business, why I try to give up something from myself and back to society?
So, I mean, why let a good crisis go to waste, right? And AI, like this is obviously a problem that we often have, right? We try to put technology as the purpose. AI is not the purpose. It's a tool, right? It's a tool. And the purpose, you could have many purposes, right? You could have a purpose to create social cohesion. You could have a purpose to maximize profit. You could have a purpose to be more human. And I think that the European system lends itself to have the purpose of being more humanistic, or getting back to humanism, or whatever you want to call it, but putting people into the center. And AI is just a tool to enable that.
Right. However, and I say this example, China, AI is heavily used for surveillance and control of society. So it's limiting your freedom. It has a good and bad things from it, but it's a tool which can be political use, which can use in industry, society, and policy for their own agenda. So it's a neutral one, but positive. So let's talk about the positive things, because this is future optimism.
Can I say one thing about this?
Sure.
Any tool can be used in a good or a bad way.
Right.
Any tool, right? And anything you have can be any food you have can be either tasty or poisonous. It's just a question of doses. right? Of how much there is. So the whole point of saying this technology is bad and the other technology is bad, this food is good, the other food is good, and so on, this does not help. It's a question of how do you use it. And the only thing on the face of this earth that does things with purpose, not just by instinct, but with purpose, with the idea of building a future or doing something, that is us as humans. So we decide how we use AI. We decide how we use guns, right? We are the ones who have to decide. We can use AI for good or for bad. And I think we should, there is a big motivation in using it for good. And I think that if we can focus it around people, like with the goal of giving people more time to be more human and actually valuing, giving them appreciation for being more human, right? That's when we see that we're using the tool to do good.
So let's use this as to jump into those two questions which we have. Yes, the first one is from Sebastian Kahn, and he asked, do you think a better understanding of what general AI actually is could us better know ourselves? So could AI guide our human skills for communication and community?
That is an excellent question. Thank you very much for that one. And the answer is yes, but. So yes, because AI is a mirror for us, right? It amplifies our experience. And by amplifying our experience, it also amplifies our prejudice and our biases and all these things. Like if we just learn from human behavior, if you have machines just learn from human behavior, we also learn the bad things. We learn discrimination. We learn probably hate. We learn fear-mongering. We learn populism. We learn and so on and so forth. I mean, there are great examples for all of this. So if we want to use AI to be more human, it also needs to bring back our ability to rationalize. We need to actually contemplate. And this is why I liked you saying in the beginning you're an AI philosopher, right? I think it's the time for philosophy to come back, right? For a long time, the philosophy was efficiency, period, right? Get there as fast and as cheap as you can. Now there actually is the big question. What's the purpose? Why am I here? Again, and if you're able to actually go away from the emotional eyeball stuff that you see in media, stuff just written to catch eyeballs, or that you have social media optimized for, your dopamine hit and a like, instead of your endorphin hit when you actually made somebody else happy, right? So, and making someone else happy is a much better and longer feeling for both of you. So that's the point. We need, AI is a tool that can help us, but we need to step up to our potential as humans and be more rational about it.
So this leads to the second question. Yes, I think it's from Tina, or Tina rephrased it from the chat maybe. Coming back to trust in AI supporting humankind in concentrating on creative matters and less on boring routine tasks. Question: who's controlling AI and how can we control that no bad-minded humans use AI for dividing society? In brackets, look at the US, social media, and both influencing public opinions.
You can't control that, right? The question, if you want to control, like I'm talking about control that, then you really think it's like, how can we control people so they don't say bad things?
In China,
we are in a democracy. We are in a democracy, and for our system, for our society, we allow people to say bad things because we believe that there is a majority that will say, no, we don't take this, right? There is a discussion, there is a debate. People, but look, we have taken debate out of the system. I've seen a very funny cartoon the other day. There's a parent and a kid, and the parent says to the kid, what is the magic word that will get you what you want? And obviously the parent wants the kid to say please, right? And the kid stays there and says, I'm offended. Because that gets you what you want today.
Interesting.
Very good cartoon.
I agree. I often have this, but this is a powerless thing. If you work with a company, like you're a client, you want something, and they mistreat you, like long waiting line, bad products, all I can do is yell on social media. This is the only power I have left.
Don't go shopping there. Go found your own company that does it right. I mean, the whole point, if you don't like the burger joint you're going to, found a new burger joint that you love. Some of the best restaurants were created that way because people who do things with a passion, like if you were really hating a place because maybe they do good food but bad service or something, and you create your own, you're doing it for a purpose. You're not just doing it to profit maximize. I think that's there. But let me get quick. The point is that we need rational thinking. Like, you are not entitled to your own set of facts. We need to take facts back. Like this whole question of, we need to put the common good, the good of the many, before self. We have become very egotistical. We need to put rational thinking before feeling, right? We need to put facts before beliefs. That is very important. If we don't do that, then these things where people are talking about the same thing, but they have a totally different set of facts, like you can see in American politics right now, that is crazy. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but it's very emotional, and we just get swept up in the stream of emotion. We need to step back. We need to be able to rationalize, and we need to be able to have a debate rather than a public trial.
So I agree to disagree in parts. I would say, yes, AI is a tool, helps us to rationalize, and that's one step, well, how we use it.
Sorry, AI doesn't help us with that at all. We have to do it.
Yeah, but it's a tool, but still,
if we have
productivity. Yes, it can make a process which is very manual, automatic, so you have more free time to do more creative work or other things. I still believe that being human means being emotional. I have for years tried to control my emotions, do not let them out, and be very rational. And now for the last years, since I'm married, I learned to get along with emotions, use them, and this is my drive, my passion, my purpose. That's coming from emotions and not from being rational.
Don't get me wrong. It is both.
True.
Right? We need both.
Brain and heart.
We are not robots. We're not automatons that have.
We are.
But we are not just animals that live off instinct either. We as humans have a big responsibility because we have both. We have emotion and we have ratio. And we need to put rationality and emotion together, right? Because if you're just rational, you never start the impossible, right? But if you're just emotional, you constantly hate people, which is not necessary. Right? And you give rise to populism and conspiracy and all this stuff. So emotion plus rational. It's not either or. The big thing is put it together.
We are, from my view, we are animals and we are biological machines. So I believe one day AI will help us to decode our brain and help us to rewrite it or code it again.
Well, that's a very philosophical question and really a question of the future. Like, what is our evolution? Like, what's our next evolutionary state? I think we're quite far from that question. So it's great to debate right now because it's not. But we are at a place where our fundamental economical principle is changing, and that also helps us, right? And I think that rise of populism, rise of conspiracy, rise of this irrational behavior towards how the world works. Is showing that we're coming to an end of an era, and it's our responsibility to try and do the transition as smoothly as possible. Like, we don't want a lost generation. Currently, we have the financial means and we have the social means to move all of us, leave no one behind, move all of us into the digital age. And the coronavirus showed us, that it's necessary, because otherwise you simply can't deal with this pandemic. And I think what's even more important is that if we sit our arses together, we can do it.
And this comes to me, I often have this question I ask myself. We have China, super ambitious in terms of AI and technology, and they have great companies. You have the United States, military and also economically very powerful. And Europe, kind of, it's mediocre. We don't have large AI companies. We don't have large digital companies. We don't have the financial means like official, we don't put it into, we don't invest it. How can we continue with our wealth to exist in times where other huge political blocs just have more speed and willpower and will maybe overrun us or just will make us not important?
So I mean, I can give you this from personal experience, right? So in China, this is all taken from a society basis, right? Politically designed for social cohesion, and it works really well. In America, it's all profit-based, but for consumers, right? So what's in it for me? And if I get comfort, I'll do it. Those two ships have sailed. Like, I don't know if we want the Chinese ship, but it works for China really well. And we could want the American ship because it really works well. And a lot of us go to the Valley and are very impressed and so on. But it has sailed. Like, that's not catchable. You can't catch Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and so on. They're not catchable, right? So the only thing that is left to do is go with the old industries. And it's worthwhile doing it. It's worthwhile doing it because there's so much experience stored there, right? And this experience comes from people. And only if we show value to people, then, or our appreciation towards people or for people, only then is this possible. So if we start valuing the experience of people, if we start respecting the experience of people and what they've done, then we get somewhere. The problem is that, and I've been trying this, right? Changing an industry or changing a company that's been doing something for 20, 40, 60, 100 years is much more difficult than changing a consumer who you can say, hey, egotistically, if you do this, you'll get this comfort, right? So we have maybe the harder change to do in Europe, but we also have a huge potential because once economy or these type of businesses, the industry changes, the lever that they have is much, much bigger than you have in changing a single consumer. And the network effect in industry, if you start changing one industry, because we have a globalized economy and all the supply chains are interconnected, and we've seen this now in the Corona crisis, the lever is much bigger. It's not just one consumer then telling their friends, if you change behavior, let's say in the automotive industry or in the food production industry or something like this, all the suppliers will change as well. All of those will change. So I think this is the much harder task, and I can see it from your face like, oh man, right? This is the much harder task, but it's the only thing left to us. It is what we're really good at. And I think especially in Germany, but all over Europe, we kind of excel when things get hard.
I don't give up on us, but I don't truly believe that the cake is large enough to provide a wealth surplus for everyone. So my generation, we are living less good than our parents' generation. It's not going up. We have more tools and more freedom and everything, but still we can't afford property, we can't afford a car, even if we don't need it. We don't buy Tiffany rings anymore, which is not a bad trend. Sometimes going back more to nature and basics can be something good. Still, let's take the example of automotive. If we disrupt automotive into the knowledge working mobility industry we need, bringing people from A to B with a great experience, having this as a purpose, I need significant less cars. I need significant less repair shops, insurances. Everything will shrink.
No.
We'll leave a lot of problems. Like people.
Okay, Fabian, this is now I thought we were talking about optimism, right? So let's make this optimistic.
Yes, please. Why? I will challenge you.
50 years ago, there were 100 people in a factory that's now run by 5.
Right.
So, and yet we have more jobs. The point is that if we disrupt the automotive industry, there's one KPI right now that the whole industry is run by, which is number of cars sold.
Yes, terrible.
Right? So no, that made a lot of sense for the longest time, right? Because that is the number that drives an economies of scale business model. Because the more cars you can produce, the more cheap one car is to produce, the higher your margin, right? This measure makes complete sense. They're not all idiots there, right? The point is, if you change that number, that KPI that the automotive industry is measured against, into miles driven, which is probably much more relevant to people, right? Because if you drive, hold on a sec, let me. If you drive a mile, you actually are getting from A to B, so you get much more value out of that than by buying a car. You might look at the car, whatever, right? But if you drive a mile, you get much more value out of that as a person. So it's much more connected to the end value of the product that you're having, and of course, yes, there's in a shared economy on cars. By the way, it would be really easy to disinfect cars like every time someone used it, right? So this is not, I've heard this argument, yeah, the share economy goes down the drain. I don't think so, right? So the point is in a shared car mobility environment, we need way less cars, but we will still have the same miles driven. And I think that the dealerships, for example, will turn into service centers, right? That is totally clear. There's going to be totally new shops, and they are about making lives of people who are using the mobility service better. And the question is, do we have the power to transition this from our current mobility industry? And I think we should have. And you can see people trying. I mean, these large companies are making things, doing things that we would have thought impossible, like the biggest competitors creating a joint venture together and stuff like this.
Right now,
but the point is that as soon as something slips, we declare them idiots and assholes and whatnot and corrupt and so on, right? But we should tell them, yeah, you're on the right path. Try again and again. Try faster. Try harder.
So one thing I take from you is, for everyone out there in the podcast, videocast, or in the live, don't yell at people that much. Don't judge them too much. Let them fail. Let them learn, and encourage them to get up and do more.
Yes. And there will be more jobs in the mobility industry.
Okay. I agree with you. As I said, I challenge you on purpose because I have two optimists and one has to be a devil's advocate. And I see too. I mean, I look at our business. We had 100% revenue crash whole year. Everything is dead. Like, you prepare a conference for a year, nothing happens. And we still get up and we still continue. We invent new formats, and I will see how the world turns. That's if you have an optimistic view on the world, believing that the day tomorrow could be better than today.
Yes, exactly. But you have to do something for it. You can't just sit there at the sideline and say like, oh man, you're failing and this didn't work and blah. You have to join the party. It's actually pretty cool.
Okay. We don't have the time, but I took from your last keynote, we could use AI to improve climate change. To provide everyone more, I call it nature, being more back to nature, having more space, more freedom, being less clustered in cities, for example. We could use AI to have longer, healthier life, maybe happier lives too. We can use AI to unite human society for one purpose and purposeful, good future. And by the way, free education or education in general. I love them. And by the way, if you ask Bernie Sanders, he would agree with all of this. He just would not use AI. He would use a different term to say that's what we need.
As I said, AI is the tool, right? So, and Bernie Sanders says we can do everything as long as we do it in a socialistic way. I think that it would be much easier to agree with that if we said we can do it together. If we do it together, then this is important. And I think this is why the word of the day should be solidarity.
It's an interesting word. I try to avoid it because it's coming from the SPD left-wing.
Yeah, but the left-wing guys are not using it anymore. It's really funny. They're using Umverteilung now. But solidarity is a good human trait, and it has nothing to do with the political left or right wing or whatever, right? It's the question of, we as people, do we stand up for others, or do we just are egotists? And I guess you know the NASA game, right? The NASA game showing you that if you have a group of people with average intelligence and give them a problem to solve, they 99.9% of the time beat the most intelligent person on the planet by themselves, right?
Because we are a small intelligence.
Yeah, that's an interesting definition, right? Because becoming a swarm means there is no more individuality, but our ability to argue, our ability to because everybody has a different point of view. Everybody has a different starting point. Our ability to find an equilibrium in solving problems, that is what makes us as people strong. And this is also what we can replicate into AI. And this is why if we do stuff together rather than against each other, that's when we move forward. And I think at least the beginning of the Corona crisis has shown us very clearly, if you do stuff together, it moves forward really quickly. Only when you start bashing each other does it stall.
So we are almost done with 1 hour. And Chris, first I thank you. You had plenty of good input as usual. We drifted apart. I tried to pull it back together. We drifted sometimes apart, but as usual, we could talk for hours. Chris, when will we see you live on stage again? What do you think?
I actually do hope that we have events where I think the whole streaming events are coming back in these terms, and you'll see much better productions. I hope you're going to do this, right? Because put people on stage. I would hope that we get a combination, right? I mean, if you are a speaker, it's very important to have an audience because you need to see the reaction. Is what you're saying, is it understandable or is it not understandable? Do people like it? Can they reflect on it and so on? But obviously, since we learned virtual meetings, the audiences can be so much bigger. I mean, there's lots of things to be done. And I hope that, I mean, you are an event planner, you're an investor, you're an AI person. If you can't bring it together, I'd lose hope, and don't make me lose hope.
So you're right here, official invited as a keynote speaker, 17, 18 November latest. So put it in your calendar. Physical in Berlin, we will have a huge stage, enough space, a selected group of people to clap, and then we'll stream this for free live out to everyone. You only have to pay if you want to be there in person or if you want to network, so use it for business. Education content should be free. So mark your calendar, 17th, 18th of November, the Reservoir Summit for Society and Applied AI.
Cool, I'm definitely coming.
So Chris, I thank you. I will do the last moderation for the rest of the audience here. Thank you for joining, and we will talk again soon.
For sure. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So that was Chris. I promised you, interesting person, fun to talk about. Next week, very, very interesting. We will speak with Professor Robin Hanson. He's the author of the book, The Age of EM, and he comes a little bit from the transhumanistic space, or from there that people loved him a lot. I was able to attend an event before with him. He has the thesis, when robots rule the world or the earth, and he has the idea of uploading or parts of our skills and building like small bots of your skills, but they will be optimal, they will be better, like knowledge worker. We just discussed with Chris, just in a virtual form, and how they will evolve. So this is a thought experiment. If you like this kind of thought experiments, join us next week. It's not 11 a.m. because he lives in the United States. I think it is 3 p.m. Central Time, so he can do it in the morning. We do it in the afternoon as usual. Join for free. It will be fun. It will be very interesting. The week after, we have a member of parliament there, Thomas Heiermann. We will speak about the new Germany. I will take a lot of feedback today from Chris to ask him questions. How can we make Germany more virtual, more digital, more using AI? So thank you for joining today. It was, as usual, a pleasure. Stay home, stay safe, and I hopefully see you again next week. Goodbye.